All right, standing you by once again, everyone. We are ready on this side. Standing by in 30 seconds. Good morning, everyone. It's 10:20 this Sunday morning, June 14, 2020. We are at the Media Center here at the Office of the Prime Minister in Kingston, Jamaica. Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, is joined by the Chief of Defense Staff, Lieutenant General Rocky Meade, along with the Commissioner of Police, Major General Anthony Anderson, the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Horace Chang, the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of National Security, Senator Matthew Samuda, and the Attorney General, Mrs. Marlene Malahoo Fort. The Prime Minister will now speak. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Naomi. Good morning, everyone. On the advice of the security forces, I have recommended to the Governor General that a state of public emergency be declared in the Kingston Central and the Kingston Western Police Divisions. The Governor General has signed the proclamation giving effect to the state of public emergency in the areas recommended from this morning for 14 days. This will connect the states of public emergency existing in the Kingston East and St. Andrews South police divisions, creating an effective security corridor along the waterfront from Bull Bay in the east to Ferry in the west. The space now declared has seen increased criminal activity in the second quarter of this year. These areas, if left unchecked, have shown historically that they can spiral to chaotic ends, even having national disruptive impact. We are also observing that the gangs in these areas are not confining themselves to traditional geographical boundaries within community locations, operations, and affiliations. This presents the possibility of super gangs emerging through collaboration, and this creates a platform for the insemination of more nefarious and foreign criminal activity. We have also seen an increase in criminal activity in extortion, especially around the market districts and the South Coast Highway Improvement Project, which has started along the Harbourview through to Bull Bay route. At the launch of this project, I was clear that we will not allow criminals or politically connected persons to extort, hold up, or otherwise threaten the work in this area in any way. This is a national project, and the government will deal decisively with anyone who seeks to disrupt or otherwise interfere with the smooth operation of this road development project, which has been long anticipated and extremely beneficial to the people of Jamaica, particularly the people of St. Thomas. I will now ask the Commissioner of Police to give his overview of the situation leading up to the declaration of the SOEs. Commissioner.
Thank you, Prime Minister. So despite a national decrease in murders and shootings, the high level of violence, particularly in Kingston Western and Kingston Central divisions, is at a scale and nature that greatly endangers public safety. A few days ago in West Kingston, one of the gang feuds resulted in criminals setting the Rere Market ablaze, depriving residents in and around the community of their livelihoods. The criminals also attacked police officers who who sought to save lives as they intervened between the rival gangs. Violent crimes, that is murder and shootings, in Kingston and St. Andrew represent 42% of the national figure. These criminal acts are characteristic of long-standing and deadly inter- and intra-gang conflicts. And these have been occurring across a number of hotspots in these divisions. Today, there are currently about 48 gangs, 50% of which are actively engaged in violent conflicts in the division. Similarly, in neighboring Kingston Central Division, there are some 32 gangs actively engaged in violence and violent conflicts. These gangs have established networks across divisions to fortify their activities. And there are a number of persons wanted for murder and other violent crimes within these divisions. This year, there has been an increase in violent crimes in these two divisions. And as was previously said, within the last quarter, we have seen a spike as gang members and gang organizations seek to benefit from extortion or through extortion within the market district and have created alliances that extend from St. Andrew South all the way across to Kingston East. 74% of all murders in these divisions are attributed to gang activities. When we examine the broader picture, almost 6 months into 2020, we see signs of success in the implementation of our policing strategies. As at June the 12th, major crimes have declined by 14% overall. Robberies are down 13%, break-ins down 23%, rape is down 29%, and larceny is declined by 32%. Notwithstanding this, we are seeing a much more coordinated attempt by criminal enterprises across Kingston and St. Andrew to coordinate their activities and create a much more unified response to how they make their illegal gains from these commercial areas. So despite the 32 illegal guns that have been taken off the streets in these divisions, the violence continues. Specifically with respect to states of public emergency, we saw early in the year an increase in Kingston East. For the first month of the year, I think up in January, a sharp spike in homicides occurred. We implemented a state of emergency, and murders are down 64% in Kingston East, and shootings have declined by 70% in Kingston East since its imposition. In St. Catherine, murders are down 14% and shootings down 24%. In St. Andrew South, the gains have been marginal, where murders are down only 1%. But shootings are down 18% in that division. St. James, which has been running for the longest period, is recording the lowest number of murders and shootings that it has seen in 20 years, and the highest number of gun seizures, with them being doubling the next highest division in terms of the seizure. We've also seen reductions in murders in Westmoreland and Hanover of 48% and 57% respectively when compared with similar periods before the declaration. And shootings are down in both parishes by 40% and 66% respectively. So I'd just like to reiterate that the use of states of public emergency has never been intended to be an alternative to other policing strategies, but an addition to them. And so we still continue to do all of the other policing activities, and in particular activities directed towards capturing and convicting gang members. The use of technology in our investigations, the increased use of surveillance that we've employed that has led to a faster response time, a more precise cases, and an overall better effect that we've been having on the gangs. However, at the moment, there are too many people being killed, and we have to intervene in this manner. We remain resolute in our focus to reduce the fear of crime and crime as we continue to build solid relationships with citizens in the various communities that we police. So we will not allow violence and criminality to thrive. Our relationships with communities has been increasingly getting better over the past few months, and we intend to continue that process. The public generally can assist by contacting Crime Stop or the police directly with information, by complying with the requests of security officers at checkpoints, adhering to curfew guidelines and other guidelines, and certainly by notifying us, the JCF, of any breaches of professional conduct by members. I have to thank members of the public for the information that they've been giving us so far, and that has been significant in allowing us to resolve a number of crimes very rapidly. So thanks to all the members of the public who have been helping us. Ideally, we would have 2.8 million people helping us in some way to deal with this scourge of violence and crime. The JCF remains committed to respecting everyone, observing the rule of law, and for being that force for good. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll now invite the Chief of Defense Staff to give the definitions of the boundary.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. As indicated by the Prime Minister and the Commissioner of Police, it is clear that the police divisions of Kingston West and Kingston Central present a persistent and increasing security threat of violent crimes and require, therefore, special security measures that go beyond the ambit of normal policing powers. As a result, as you heard, we recommended to the Prime Minister and Minister of Defense that a state of public emergency be declared for Kingston Western and Kingston Central Police Divisions along the following boundaries, and we will display a map for that purpose. To the west, the boundary extends from the coastline by the Petrojam Oil Refinery in a northeasterly direction onto East Avenue, then onto Maxfield Avenue to the intersection of Russell Road. The northern boundary extends along Russell Road in an easterly direction from the intersection of Maxfield Avenue and Russell Road to its intersection with Lindhurst Road and Retirement Road. The boundary then extends southeasterly along Lindhurst Road to its intersection with Slipe Road, and southerly along Slipe Road to the intersection of Torrington Road. The boundary continues easterly along Torrington Road to Heroes Circle and continues along the northern perimeter of Heroes Circle to its intersection with Marusca Road. The boundary then extends slightly north along Marusca Road, then easterly along Connolly Avenue, then onto Dames Drive to the intersection with South Kemp Road. The eastern boundary extends in a southerly direction along South Kemp Road, then onto Port Royal Street to the coast. The southern boundary extends westerly along the coastline of Kingston, then along the St. Andrew coastline to the starting point at the Petrojam Oil Refinery. At dawn this morning, the JDF and JCF deployed to sections of these communities to give effect to today's declaration of the state of public emergency. The state of public emergency will give the security forces temporary additional powers of search, arrest, and detention, And we believe that this is necessary in order to give the security forces the necessary space to carry out the operational tasks that will be required to help to bring a sense of normalcy to the communities affected. We want to assure the citizens that both the JDF and JCF have been properly trained and oriented to give due regard to the human rights of citizens and all persons operating within the communities. In turn, we urge persons to acquaint themselves with the regulations and the requirements governing a state of public emergency in order to easily and conveniently transit the area as they go about their lawful business. During this period of the state of public emergency, there will be numerous security operations in the communities. These operations are aimed at removing violent criminal elements while adding a robust element of security for residents and other citizens transiting the area. As the Commissioner said, we implore citizens to comply with the instructions of the security forces, and we also seek your cooperation with information that can help us to keep you safe. The numbers, I remind you, are for the police 311, and the JDF also has a number 876-837-8888. The community support is a key component of our intelligence and data gathering process and rests heavily on your input and involvement. Let me finally reaffirm that the JDF and JCF are both committed and have the capacity to achieve success in this SOE as we have done in others, as you heard from the comments of the Commissioner. We welcome the continued support that we have gotten from citizens and various groups, including the private sector, as we strive to bring a lasting peace, not only to these communities, but to Jamaica. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CDS. I'll now invite the Minister of National Security.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Gangs, guns, and dons have been named and understood to be the core of the criminal activity in Jamaica. The 4 divisions of St. Andrew South, Kingston Western, Kingston Central, and Eastern Kingston has active in that area some 2/3 of the entire gangs in Jamaica. Intra-gang and inter-gang warfare and conflict is the basis of more than 80% of the homicides committed in Jamaica. We have noticed in this particular area, as indicated, increasing alliance between gangs across community and geographic boundaries and even political boundaries, which signals a level of cooperation between the gangs as they struggle over spoils, whether it is for extortion or imported weapons and other criminal activity that feed the economy of the gangs in these areas. It generates increasing homicides. And certainly for this year, we have seen that the number of homicides in the KMI region has in fact stand more than 55% of the total for the island. The level of activity in the 2 divisions named this morning, which joins the state of public emergency in the East Kingston Division and the St. Andrew South Division, has seen increased activity and demands urgent and active attention by security forces in a targeted manner. We are confident that the security forces will be able to remove from the area the kind of violence producers that are continuing to create serious pressure on the people of the corporate area, and in particular the communities involved in these 2 divisions. The security force will continue to increase other strategic development activities. Indeed, the Jamaica Constabulary Force and the Jamaica Defense Force has established a strong anti-gang team to deal with gang activity across the island. The level of gang warfare and intra-gang and inter-gang activity in these 2 divisions demand extraordinary measures, and so the government has moved to establish this and connect the 2 areas of state of public emergency in the corporate area. You'll notice from the map there's a crescent along the coastline from Bull Bay to Ferry and across the southern belt of the corporate area that could be described as the intense area of gang activity. Some 134 gangs are operational in these areas. In fact, well over two-thirds of the 389 that are active in the island from time to time get active in this particular area. I want to assure the public that the security forces will continue to expand and increase their strategic activities. The government will seek and ensure that they are provided with the requisite legislative, fiscal, and other facilities required to improve their efficiency and ensure they can deal with the level of gang activity in Jamaica. The Commissioner have outlined the success we have had so far. We will continue to expand their capacity, provide them with the requisite resources to ensure we'll, in fact, deal with this level of gang and disrupt all of the gangs operating in this area. It will take some time, but we seek the cooperation and the support of all citizens in ridding Jamaica of this great plague and disease of gang violence that undermines much of what we do as a civil society and as a state. As we move into this particular area, I urge the citizens in Central and the Kingston West Division of the police force to continue to support their police officers. The majority of officers in these areas are strong, capable, committed professionals, willing to take on the criminals and fighting to protect the citizens of Jamaica. We need the support of every decent, law-abiding citizen to ensure we can disrupt and dismantle the gangs in these areas. And thank you.
Thank you, Minister. If there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. And now for the members of the media who are on the Zoom call, we invite you then to pose your questions, if you have any, to our presenters this morning, the Prime Minister, the Chief of Defence Staff, the Commissioner, or the Minister of National Security. You can use the raise hand feature if you have any questions. Sir, may I just pose one from social media in terms of, real quickly, they really want to know the collaboration between the security forces and private security companies that would have CCTV to help in the fight against crime, and especially in hotspots.
Minister.
I'm going to invite the Commissioner. The Jamaica Eye program provides a medium by which there is a significant increase in the level of cooperation, not just with private security companies, but with the private sector in terms of using surveillance to identify and disrupt criminal activity in a number of communities. I'd invite the Commissioner to really speak some more on this development of the technology platform formation that he has established in the force, which is providing a nexus for increased cooperation and increased efficiency and effectiveness in dealing with the criminal gangs.
Thank you for that question. So our collaboration with security companies and the private security goes beyond just surveillance. We have, even in our operations, and they also see a lot of what takes place. And so they share information with us a lot, and we have that kind of relationship. Specifically with CCTVs, not just private security, but the wider use of CCTVs by private citizens has allowed us to follow up on the crimes that have been committed very rapidly, to identify the perpetrators, and also to really have the evidence to build the cases on them. So a lot of members of the public have been sharing their CCTV footage with us, as well as obviously private security, and the combination of all of that has been very useful for us.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Those on Zoom have some questions. I acknowledge Michael Sharp from JNN.
Mr. Prime Minister, sir, good morning to you and your colleagues and members of the JCF, JDF, et al. The question I have this morning is, I think I hear a collective sigh from the business operators in these areas, having gone through the COVID lockdown? And could you remind us of what the operating hours of businesses will be like so they can perhaps remind themselves of what the undertakings are for a state of emergency and how they operate?
Well, the two sets of special measures will be coordinated. So business persons would not have to fear that under the SOEs that there would be special restrictions that would further tighten what now exists, as in particular the national curfew hours. So the national curfew hours will prevail, and in these new sets of SOEs that have been declared, those national curfew hours will be the hours maintained. So whatever is the national curfew hours under the Disaster Risk Management Act, those will apply under this SOE. But I agree with you, Michael. I think that the business operators within that corridor, which essentially covers the business district and the market district of Kingston and St. Andrew, that they would now be breathing a sigh of relief, because we have seen in the last quarter, in this quarter, an increase in criminal activity, particularly around extortion. And I want to repeat very loudly and very clearly that the government will act in a decisive fashion to deal with anyone who seeks to extort, disrupt, hold up, or stop any public works, particularly the South Coast Road Improvement Project, which has been so long anticipated and so beneficial to the economic development of the country.
Thank you, sir. I acknowledge Mrs. Dion Jackson-Miller from Radio Jamaica.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Mr. Prime Minister, we had at one stage heard from the head of the security forces suggestions that the states of emergency would need to be in place for 5 to 7 years for there to be an effective, implementation of the crime fighting process to really get murders under control, let me put it that way. Is that your thinking, sir? And if not, what is it you're looking at?
Well, Dion, it wasn't only said by the chief of the security forces, the chief of defense staff and the commissioner of police. You'll recall that in Parliament, I said that very same thing, that Jamaica's crime problem are almost entrenched. Well, not almost, they are entrenched. And if you were to use an epidemiological phrasing, it is almost endemic. And we need to root it out. And the measures that we have put in place to deal with the health emergency, those similar measures need to be translated to deal with the crime emergency, particularly the murder emergency. Violence is a disease, it is a virus, and there are no vaccines available for violence other than education, and that takes a little while. So to deal with the emergency of it, we have to put in place these measures. And so, yes, we have been upfront and we have said that to effectively deal with the murder and violence epidemic, you will need to have special measures in place for an extended period. However, you will note also that we have said that these measures should not unduly impact on the rights and freedoms of the citizens. And I believe that the way in which we have executed these special measures, we have done so with the greatest respect and faithfulness to the rights of the citizens of Jamaica. And you will see that last year in the COM reported the lowest ever police killings in 40 years. So some people will say, are the SOEs successful? Because you're still not necessarily bringing down murders as much as we would like. But if you balance both things, which is to use force without violence, you will see that our security forces have been doing an excellent job in flattening the murder curve and at the same time bringing down the police killings or security forces killings. And I think keeping those two numbers in check is the best thing that you could have for the society. And as long as we keep using these powers in the way in which we have been using and refining their use and improving how we use them, then we will see both a decrease in murders and in police killing, making Jamaica a peaceful and safe place for all. Thank you, Leon.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I see the Attorney General just speaking with the Prime Minister. Let's then go to Mr. Laverne Barrett from the Gleaner Company, and Ms. Andrea Chisholm will be next. So first, Mr. Laverne Barrett from the Gleaner. Mr. Barrett, could you unmute your mic? Laverne? We're not able to hear Laverne right now. Can we then just go to Ms. Andrea Chisholm until Laverne sorts out that audio issue? Andrea? Andrea Chisholm from TVJ?
Yes, good morning. Are you hearing me?
Not hearing Andrea either. May I remind those on the Zoom call to unmute your mics? I think we're hearing Andrea. Andrea, go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning. My questions are...
You're very low. Let's start again for us, Andrea.
Are you hearing me clearer now? Because I'm speaking very loudly.
Much clearer. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Approximately how many persons are now being detained in SOEs across the island? And what adjustments have been made to process and deal with those detained in light of COVID-19?
Okay, thank you, Andrea. We have approximately 280 at the last count I saw across the island detained. And that number changes, can change daily, but it's roughly the high 200s that we've seen to low 300s across the entire country. Across all of our facilities that we have, not just people detained, but people who are under a state of emergency, but the wider set of persons who are just in conflict with the law and have to be held in our facilities, whether the courts have remanded them there or for whatever reason. We have about 2,000 people in our custody. So a small part of it are people detained under the state of emergency. We put in measures from the very early stages of COVID in terms of the interaction between the public and persons who are being held. And we have a process of sanitization, of distancing, of even the things that are carried in for persons who are being held have to go through a process of sanitization. And we did that very early. The other thing we do is once we take somebody into custody, initially they go into what we have designated as a quarantine holding facility. So there's particular stations where they'll be taken to, where they'll be held for the 14-day period before they end up in our general holding facilities. We also have some other stations and places designated as isolation areas in case we start to get any cases occurring. So far, fortunately, these measures have worked, and we haven't had any cases in our custody. So those measures seems to have worked. Similarly, we have similar processes that have protected our members, so that we have only had one member test positive for COVID-19 to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Mr. Barrett has indicated that he is having some technical challenges. He has two questions. Can the Chief of Defense Staff give an update on the missing M16 rifles? And the second question, has there been any consideration given to changing strategy from SOEs, given that there is a perception that it's not as effective?
Thank you very much. So with respect to the missing weapons, we have advanced our investigation to the point where we have 2 persons that will be facing our internal disciplinary procedures shortly. We have still not located the weapons. We are working with the JCF to see if we can trace the weapons. But certainly our internal processes are such where we have two persons who are going to be facing disciplinary procedure shortly. I wouldn't be able to go into details, obviously, because it's a judicial type system that we also have internally. With respect to the SOEs, the commissioner gave some figures earlier that indicated that they have been very successful. So I'm not sure if there's any clarification that would be provided in terms of what the question is asking. But I wouldn't want to repeat the stats that the commissioner gave, but the SOEs have been very, very successful.
Thank you, sir. Prime Minister, there's just one follow-up, but there are persons on social media who are just trying to find out the characteristics of gangs, really, and how pervasive they are in Jamaica, so that all Jamaicans can fully understand and appreciate what's going on at the crime level.
Well, as I said earlier in my introduction, we notice that the gangs are evolving. They are not necessarily now community-based. They are going across formerly geographically and politically defined areas. Their collaboration and alliances lend themselves to the formation of what I call super gangs. They create the platform for the insemination of more nefarious kinds of activities, including cyber activities and other kinds of criminal activities that would be considered foreign to the Jamaican context. And we're seeing more and more those kinds of behavior presenting themselves, which from a national security assessment requires a more national and coordinated security response. The SOEs will give us the ability to move across the police divisions. As you see, we now have a corridor across the waterfront, and we can largely move along with the gangs. So as they move from one community to the next, we can move along with them within this zone. We are also noticing an increase, as I've said before, in extortion. And extortion is inherently a gang activity, and it is the economic operations of almost all gangs. And that is particularly worrisome at a time when businesses are suffering under an economic recession, to now have an imposition on them of extortion that is of significant concern to the government. And we are also very particularly concerned that a national road project is about to begin, has started actually, and we are seeing signs of gangs, including politically connected persons, operating in such a way as to seek to extort or in other ways disrupt and prevent works from taking place. And I want to make it very clear, absolutely clear, that this is a national project, and we will not allow thugs to disrupt our national project.
Sir, one follow-up I'm seeing online, Mrs. Jackson Miller, then we can have a good morning. Mrs. Miller?
Thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Prime Minister. In relation to the length of time, we're 2 years, over 2 years from the time you first declared the first St. James state of emergency. So in terms of the timeline you're looking at, you're essentially saying that if elected for another term, we would be seeing all these states of emergency and probably more extending throughout your entire next term. Is that correct?
No, that wouldn't be absolutely correct. If for some reason of good favor, crime were to go down, murders were to go down, then there would be no need. And I say it in that way to make the distinction. We are only using these measures because crime is high and murders are. Just one clarification for Michael Sharp asked a very important question regarding how the measures will work together. That is the Disaster Risk Management Act and the Special Powers, Emergency Powers Act. As it relates to curfews, as I've said, the national curfew will be the overarching measure, and the SOEs will align to that. However, the public should also note that, as necessary, the security forces will conduct special operations within the defined areas under a state of public emergency. And from time to time, they may declare, as necessary, different curfew hours. So that is an operational matter that will be declared as necessary and as seen fit.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you
Prime
very
Minister.
much.
All right. Thank you so much, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this morning. A special press conference being hosted by Prime Minister the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. Please do have a very good Sunday and rest of the day as well as the coming week.